Hello and welcome to Pursuit 365's show on spirituality. I'm your host, Rani Sanghera, holistic healer, yoga instructor, and psychedelic guide and coach. Today we have Taegan Ackland-Gaetz with us. She is an Akashic Record reader and a Reiki practitioner. Taegan, it's so good to have you here. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited about today.
That's great. Why don't we begin by you just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, so like you said, I'm an Akashic Record reader. I'm also a Reiki master teacher and practitioner. So I offer Akashic Record readings as well as energy clearing sessions where I kind of utilize both of these different modalities to be able to help people typically release stuff energetically from this present life and moving into past lifetimes, as well as give general readings based off of the essence of their soul, basically, which is what the Akashic Records are looking into.
Wow, sounds interesting. What drew you to this line of work?
I think that I've always been interested in this general realm or this general field of spirituality. I think I started off being interested in spirituality in general, but it started off with like tarot and astrology when I was a teen and even before that. But actually what really drew me to this was I became a Reiki practitioner about like 3 years ago now. And that was after having some really amazing Reiki sessions and energy clearing sessions done with the person that became my mentor. And it was just astounding to me how big of a difference moving stagnant energy out of the body really makes. And yeah, it really like kind of changed the trajectory of my life in general. And like feeling the difference between like energy not being moved, like for my entire life up until a certain point, and then energy being released, and like how different it really felt. And then the Akashic Records are also something that I've been interested in for like quite a few years at this point, but just recently started doing Akashic Record work and Akashic Record readings with people. And that was more because there was a realization that when you do readings, sometimes you can be reading people's energy body or you can be reading people's subconscious mind, and the Akashic Records really kind of allows you to tune into the soul and the higher self a little bit more.
Interesting. And for our viewers that don't know what Akashic Records are, do you think you could just explain that to us?
Definitely.
Or to them, rather?
Definitely, yeah. So the Akashic Records basically are a compendium of information of your soul, past, present, and future. So it exists without time, and it's basically a dimension of consciousness that you can access. So when I'm accessing the Akashic Records, I use a prayer to enter the records, and I typically use somebody's full legal name if I'm accessing somebody's specific records. And it's almost like I feel a channel of energy coming up and out through my crown chakra, connecting me to that dimension of consciousness. And basically it's a dimension of consciousness where information exists that you can have access to.
Wow, it sounds really interesting. What would you say, so if somebody's coming in to have their Akashic Records read, what generally are the types of questions that they're coming in to ask you? What are they looking for clarity on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can pretty much ask anything. The only thing that the records don't love to answer are like predictive time-based questions. They can give you information about the future, but it's about like probabilities more than specific, like this will happen versus this won't happen because we have free will, etc. But people will typically ask about their purpose. They will ask about past lives. They will ask about like if they've taken on any vows that are still kind of affecting them in this present lifetime. They'll ask about karmic relationships or just like karmic or soul contracts with specific souls. If people are coming in for like an energy clearing session, they'll typically come in and ask about if there's any blockages that they're bringing in from past lives that are affecting them in the present, and all sort of stuff like that.
Wow. So what, if you wouldn't mind sharing, if you got a story about a client that maybe perhaps had a transformative experience from that, or was able to change the course of their path and find success or find love or whatever the thing was that they were looking for, would you mind sharing that with us?
Totally. Yeah. I think it's amazing because everybody is so individual. And it's honestly like really beautiful to be able to tune into people's records and see all of these like experiences that people have had lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. There definitely are patterns. So I would say like some of the most like powerful transformations that I've seen have been with like witch wound stuff. So witch wound stuff can come from like persecution in past life for intuitive or psychic ability, but it doesn't even have to be that. Doesn't even have to be that. It can be like natural healing. It can be just like speaking up against like the ruling class at the time. Like, and these are typically females in those past lifetimes, so there is definitely a little bit of like patriarchal persecution, but it's interesting because it doesn't always show up like that in this lifetime. So in the present lifetime, they might not be incarnated as a female, but they might be incarnated as a different minority group that experience prejudice. And so it's like it can totally show up in a bunch of different ways, and the source of the pain can be from like many, many, many lifetimes ago. But yeah, I think like the witch wound ones, like I've seen like incredible transformation from several people with that one. And with witch wound stuff, it's like people have a hard time being perceived. They have a hard time kind of stepping into their power, stepping into their abilities, like self-trust, letting go of self-doubt, stuff like that. I mean, there's been some really kind of crazy past lives that I've seen with people. Like I've had clients that like were on the Titanic. I've had clients that like one that was murdered by Jack the Ripper, like just to and it's
Wow.
I know, it's crazy. And it's like and it will show up in so many different ways because basically like we're going to incarnate into a family that's going to be able to perpetuate the same energies and the same pain and wound that's being brought forward from those past lives. So it's not going to show up the same way, and it almost never does. So it's like just because you've experienced that kind of crazy pain in that past lifetime doesn't mean you're going to experience it in the same way, but you'll experience it in a way that's going to be able to bring up that core energy and that emotional pain.
So it's like a cyclic pattern almost.
100%.
And then when they come and they get the reading and they get a little bit more clarity on that, then they're able to change that. Is that right?
Pretty much. So typically, so I kind of work with it on like several levels. So I will typically like look into the source of the pain through the records. And I think just being able to like acknowledge what the actual source of the pain is and be able to like just like give it the like respect that it deserves is really healing. And like also objectivity that it deserves is really healing, because a lot of the time we're trying to work through patterns in this present lifetime that have roots like way before this lifetime, and wondering like, why can't I step out of this pattern? And it's like, oh, it's because like I don't fully understand why I'm experiencing this. And so being able to like actually know why and what the source of it is really healing for people. But I also do a couple of other things that help to kind of like move the energy through the energy body. And so one of the things is doing a soul integration piece. And so basically what I'm doing there is I'm asking our masters, teachers, and loved ones, so our highest vibrational guides, as well as basically the masters and lords that are in charge of the records. And so there are energy beings that specifically kind of stay in the records and pass information onto our highest vibrational guides that give us the information that we're looking for or whatever we're able to access at that time. And so I'll ask them to connect us with that past life version of the soul with a beam of white light, typically. And so why I'm doing that, so if a version of our soul is stuck in a particular moment of time, and that's basically what happens with that past life wound. So because time isn't linear the way that we think it is, it's actually parallel. Basically, there is like a part of us that's still existing in that pain. And so what I have to do is connect to that past life version of the soul and get it to reintegrate into the now, into the eternal now, because that pain is still existing. And so it's still existing for that present version of self as well. So whatever, and then when you integrate it, it's kind of healing in all directions of time. And so that typically takes a little bit of like discussion with that past life version of self, as well as doing some energy work on either the present energy body, or I can also do energy work on that past life version of self.
Right.
It's all, there's no linearness with it. It's all happening at the same time.
Same time, yeah.
And then additionally, I will typically do energy work on the present version of self as well. So if it is hanging out anywhere in the energy body in the now, then I'll do like a form of Reiki, but it's not as formal as how I would typically have done Reiki in the past, where I'm kind of calling on the specific Reiki symbols. I'm kind of just using source energy and my connection as like a conduit of that to be able to bring in an energy to help release it, and then I kind of get their assistance to kind of work on it somatically as well, and that usually ends up moving the energy.
That sounds really cool. So I guess each individual session is kind of tailored to each person, if I'm correct, because everyone's going to show up with different things. And how do you, what are some other tools that you have? You do Reiki and the soul alignment that you said. Are there other tools that you use as well? Do you do tarot reading as well?
I don't, I don't use tarot in my sessions. I will use tarot when I'm kind of like doing energy updates, but you know what I actually found, like when I was doing tarot, kind of like leading up to the point of actually being able to do like readings more professionally, I found that I was leaning on the symbolism a little bit too heavily. And it's just easier for me to just tune into somebody's energetic field and ask for stuff to start coming through. And so that kind of really came with the cultivation of my own intuitive and psychic abilities.
Yeah.
But I use a bunch of different stuff in my sessions. So it's like, so I'm doing like an Akashic reading. I'm using Reiki and like generalized kind of energy work, but I'm also using somatics pretty heavily.
Okay.
Like I'm basically like when I'm doing energy work on somebody, for the most part, I'm getting them to assist me in it. And so what I've found, like if I'm just doing energy work, it can sometimes be hard for the person to like actually let it go, because a lot of the time they're stuck up here when they need to be in the body.
Yeah.
And so, so when I'm doing energy work, I'll get them to like help me and assist them with it. And then I typically am like, anytime something comes up in the future, like lean on the sensation. Like I'll get people to like label it in as many ways as they can. Like color, shape, texture, is it an emotion, is it a memory, and like bring yourself back to whatever the sensation is. And so I definitely use that pretty heavily in my sessions as well, because I know that like that's what's going to end up helping people heal in the long term, because having like an external source of help is fantastic, but eventually we need to be able to like kind of regulate and be able to do these things for ourselves. And a lot of the time, like when we haven't had any of this kind of work done, or we haven't been in this field at all, then it's really helpful to have that external source of assistance. But eventually we want to be able to turn all of the energy back and find all of the answers inside instead of externally. So Nice.
And what sort of role did mindfulness and somatics play in your own healing journey?
So I would say mindfulness and somatics, I kind of like pair as one, because I feel like you kind of need the mindfulness to be able to do the somatics, if that makes sense. So it's like the mindfulness of what the sensations are, the mindfulness of like what the actual thought patterns are that you kind of have on repeat, even if it's in the background. And like without the mindfulness, it would be really hard to tune into the somatic piece of it. So like what the actual sensations are, what you're actually experiencing in your body. And so they're kind of like two sides to the same coin for me. But I would say like somatics and mindfulness, as well as energy work, have been some of the most like transformatory parts of like my own personal healing journey. And that's why I incorporate it into what I'm doing. So it's funny because when I actually started off doing my Reiki, or after I had gotten that, like those initial Reiki and energy work sessions that had been really healing for me, I was currently doing my undergrad in counseling psychology. And so I do have like a bit of that kind of prior knowledge, but what I noticed was that those energy work sessions were actually way more beneficial for me personally than any talk therapy, any kind of counseling had been at all prior to that point. And so, yeah, the somatics, so like the body-based stuff, as well as like just like energy work, has been like hands down the most transformatory pieces for my own personal healing journey.
And then, I mean, that is where all of our energy blocks show up.
Yeah, 100%.
They're in our body.
100%. And then like, and for the most part, like we're trying to figure it out logically. And we're trying to like you can't figure it out. Like these aren't things that like you can like rationalize and intellectualize till you're blue in the face, but it's not going to help move energy out of your body.
Yeah.
Through your body. And if you're not doing that, then it's like you're not really getting to the source of the problem.
Right.
You're just kind of band-aiding it.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're working with your clients, what sort of practices do you give them to take home, or to continue on with that?
Yeah, so there will definitely be like individualized advice, because I'm tuning into each person's spirit team or their guides. And so I ask them for the most part if there are like specific things that each person should be doing or that they recommend for each person. But really, like the things that I would recommend to anybody are grounding. Like grounding is so important. It's so important. And like, you can be in your body, but I feel like if you're not kind of consciously bringing the energy down and like into the earth and grounding your energy, it's almost like it gets a bit too full in here or something. Like it just kind of gets like a bit overwhelming energetically. And so it's like you need to bring it down to be able to kind of cultivate that root chakra energy. So it's like that like stability, that safety, that security. And if you're not like really focusing on that initially, then you're going to end up being in the mind. And so it's like, you got to bring it down. And then like mindfulness and somatics are definitely something that I encourage everybody to do, especially if people are on a spiritual journey and people that are wanting to do like shadow work. Those are the things that are going to allow yourself to be able to like recognize what your actual shadow aspects are.
Oh. Right on. Oh, sorry. I just got thrown off. My dog just walked in. So tell us a little bit about your Reiki work. How does that work? Like, what do you do? Personalized sessions, or is this something that you just bring into your reading sessions?
Yeah, so I started off with, and I used to do like just Reiki sessions. But now I do energy clearing sessions. And so what I found was that when I was just doing Reiki, it was really, really focused on the present lifetime and the present energy body. And like we kind of discussed, like a lot of the time it needs to go back further than that. And so what I ended up doing was doing a kind of combination of those things where like I would open up somebody's records, and typically I'll just like ask if there are certain blockages that need to be addressed, or if there are certain things that need to be kind of like worked on. And for the most part, like their guides will bring me to past life experiences that typically are super like pertinent to the person's current life situation. And then we'll kind of do that soul integration thing and then do energy work. And then I will typically also do just like a energetic scan of the person's energy body in my mind's eye. And so it's a lot less formal than it used to be. So how I used to do it is I would start at the crown, go down through each energy center and kind of like work on the individual blockages. And I will do that sometimes in the energy sessions. But for the most part, I'm really just like scanning for like what actually needs to be touched on, acknowledged, released, and felt. Yeah.
And when you're doing the scans, what sort of cues do you get? What to know that there is something going on for them?
Yeah, so for me, it's really visual, like clairvoyant. So a lot of the time my eyes are closed in sessions because it's way easier for me to see. And so I'm doing like a visual in my mind's eye scan of the person's energy body, and they will like actually show me what chakras need to be worked on, and then I will tune into the chakra that they're basically telling me to tune into, and then I will get a kind of download of information. And so there will be like a knowing, as well as like I will feel like what is kind of going on for that person. And so it ends up, it's really clear because I feel it in my body. Like I feel all of it. And so I'm just able to kind of like tell them what I'm feeling based off of what I'm connecting into in their energy body.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you do mediumship as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so again, that's like a super individualized thing as well. So like I'll do mediumship with past loved ones, as well as like pets, but also guides, like higher vibrational guides, as well as like higher vibrational beings in general. And I kind of have like they can pop in whenever they want, but typically for me, like what ends up happening is if I'm tuning into somebody's crown chakra, like they're all there, because that's kind of like where the communication from the higher dimensional beings or your guides or your past loved ones or whatever is coming through. So when I'm tuning into a person's crown chakra, it kind of enables me to connect to all of those beings as well. And then, I mean, like how it kind of comes in for me is I'll feel like a rush of heat and like vibration, and I typically like feel them around me. And then when I'm tuning into each kind of individual being that's coming forward, again, it's really visual, so I'll be able to kind of see what they look like and describe it to the person that I'm working with. And then I'll also be able to give them like downloads of like information or whatever that being like wants to kind of convey to the person.
And this is all visual for you, or are you hearing it? What is their mode of communication with you?
So it's visual. I do get some words. A lot of it is just like a like telepathic kind of download of information. And sometimes I like see the words too, like they'll spell it for me because it is really visual sometimes.
Yeah.
But then there's also like, so it's like the claircognizance, the clairvoyance, the clairsentience. So I can feel it. I get the knowing, I get the visual, and I do get just like words that they're telling me sometimes too. Yeah.
And what is the most memorable session that you've had doing your mediumship?
Oh, that's a very good question. There's been like a couple occasions where I'm connecting somebody with somebody that has passed on quite recently, and I think that's always really healing because I'm able to, like, for the most part, I'm able to like give them kind of reassuring messages on both ends, so kind of like allowing them to know that like their person is okay. They're on the other side. They're always with them. They're watching. They're like very present with them. But I also like typically they'll give me some kind of like symbol to watch out for. So if like the last one I did was like a shamrock or like a clover, and there's also been ones that are like, okay, when you see a feather, like that will be me, kind of thing. So and also people's pets, like people's pets love to come through. Yeah.
Oh, right on. And do you have people coming just to speak with their pets, or just with loved ones, or the pets just happen to come through when people are there?
Pets, I mean, like it can be whoever is like a being that wants to communicate with the person. So I don't have anybody that is specifically coming to talk with pets, or really even specifically coming to talk with past loved ones. It kind of just ends up being part of what happens in a typical session, and especially when I'm in somebody's records, because I'll be able to connect with a person's guides, and like what I'm connecting with is people's masters, teachers, and loved ones. So the loved ones is obviously past loved ones, teachers is guides, and then masters are like ascended masters that are working with people. Yeah, so not typically like specific mediumship that people are coming to me for, but it ends up just kind of being part of the package.
And how long is a session typically?
So I have a couple different options. I have anywhere from 30 minutes up to 90 minutes. So 30 minutes, I'm typically only offering like the energy clearing sessions for 30 minutes, and that's more for like specific issues or tune-ups for people that have kind of done it already. But I'll also do that as an Akashic Record reading if people just want really kind of quick answers. But I prefer to do at least 60 minutes for the Akashic Record reading, because there's just a lot of information that comes through a lot of the time, and I want to be able to give it all the amount of time and energy that it deserves. And then I do 60-minute Akashic Record readings, as well as 60-minute energy clearing sessions, and then I will do a 90-minute Akashic reading with energy clearing sessions, where you get to have both.
Nice.
Yeah.
Before we pop off the call, I was going to ask if you've got any workshops, or do you do any group stuff, anything coming up that our viewers can check out?
Yeah, totally. So I am in the process of building a Reiki 1 and 2 kind of mentorship cohort. And so I'm kind of just getting all of the details, but I've had quite a few people say that they're interested in that. So that's going to be something that I'm offering in the next couple of months. So if anybody's interested in doing that with me, it's going to be Reiki level 1 and 2, but it's also going to be focused on the intuitive development piece as well. So people can do intuitive readings at the same time as offering Reiki sessions. So yeah, that's one thing that people can join. I'm going to be doing an Akashic, kind of how to connect with the Akashic Records and how to connect with your guides using the Akashic Records course later in this year. So that's going to be something to look out for later on, probably closer to the end of the year though.
Yeah.
I'm also doing monthly new moon gatherings over Zoom, and yeah, and then just connect with me on Instagram, because I'm posting on there like every day. And it's at Taegan Gaetz, so it's at TAEGANGAETZ.
Yeah. We will definitely post all of that when we post the video up. So all that information will be there. And just want to say thank you, Taegan, so much for being on the show and coming and sharing your wisdom. I feel like this is such a beautiful topic, and the blend of your energy work with the Akashic Records, it's just, it works so well together. I think it's such a nice touch that you're not just reading something, their charts, that you're actually offering them a clearing as well.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think that's just so, what a beautiful blend. Yeah. So thanks again. Thank you so much for being on the show. I hope to have you back again sometime.
Yeah, totally. Would love to.
We'll see our viewers in the next interview.
Awesome. Thank you so much.